how do we as a community gain freedom from slavery, from oppression, or in the case of the coronavirus, from infection?
Maybe the word breakthrough is part of the problem. Breakthrough implies rare. Breakthrough implies something went wrong. And that's not actually the premise of the vaccines.
Right, the premise is that you don't end up in the hospital.
We know today that many of the face cloth coverings that people wear are not very effective in reducing any of the virus movement in or out. Either you're breathing out or you're breathing in.
Sad day here, Albie. Sad day. We honor a brother, a friend, a fellow traveler, soldier. The great little Jerry Callahan.
You're just trying to make up for the fact that you let him be killed.
Hey, Alice, this is not about us today. It's the time we put away our differences and remember a great American, my good friend, my brother in arm, little Jerry Callahan, felled in the prime of his life, doing what he loved best, Alice, out foraging, adventuring, carpe diem, never taking life for granted.
I would go with carpe diem.
He explored. He broadened his horizons, Alice. And by that, he broadened all of our horizons and brightened our lives. LGC, a great man gone. My poor little chicken. Little Jerry Callahan, absolutely my favorite chicken. Thrice attacked. Well, looks like 4 times attacked, but he was 3 for 4 in the original attacks. Now gone. A great chicken. I've got a number of different pictures of him in videos. I have memorialized LGC in all sorts of ways. Not the least of which, Alice, is T-shirts available for men, women, and children.
I designed those T-shirts.
So if you guys would like to, feel free to go to burnbarrelpodcast.com. Is that right? Alice?
Yep, and there's a shop link.
And if you think that this sounds craven, that we're trying to benefit
It is.
over the death of who was to me to be honest with you, Alice, my best friend. Then I will have you know that one of our last conversations together, Jerry asked that people wear his T-shirts to remember him far and wide. Burnbarrelpodcast.com. Men, women, children. We miss you. We tip your drink to Jerry, Alice. It's something we used to do in the 90s.
Pour one out.
Yeah. You would tip your 40 ounce. I don't even know if they make those anymore. But okay, so there you go. LGC. What a chicken. What a character. What a life.
I know. I'm really sad.
So am I.
Would not have happened if I was here.
Well, maybe you're abandoning me for selfish vacays away.
Oh, yeah. That's
where you guys get to frolic in the water.
I just frolicked with all the 4 kids and the 2 dogs and the
berry picking and all those other things.
Yeah.
I was left alone. Left alone.
Yeah. And then today
Now
I was out mowing the lawn
now
and
I'm
clearing
truly
walkways and pulling weeds.
Hold
and
on,
doing all
Alice.
kinds
Don't
of things
overstate.
today.
Don't.
I'm sunburned. My
I am
shirt is
in
stained.
mourning, Alice. I'm
Okay.
not. I can't do yard work while I'm in mourning. People
Oh.
know this. This is one of the
When
stages.
can
of
you
grievance.
actually do yard work?
It's going to take me a while to get through this stage of grief, Alice. Probably a year or 2. All right. So it's interesting. It's interesting that there's this little piece of audio out there from Mike Osterholm. He's been one of these COVID's going to destroy the world and destroy your life epidemiologists for quite a while now. You probably have seen him somewhere. But he said something fascinating today on CNN. And to me, this gives away the entire ploy here. Listen to them. This is him in a passionate attempt to try to get us to use more precautions to not die from COVID and not to spread it, to kill grandmothers. He really exposes the lie of the masks to begin with. Is that a crying child? It's okay. There's other chickens. They're taking it hard. This is Mike Osterholm, the epidemiologist on masks.
We know today that many of the face cloth coverings that people wear are not very effective in reducing any of the virus movement in or out. Either you're breathing out or you're breathing in. And in fact, if you're in the upper Midwest right now, anybody who's wearing their face cloth covering can tell you they can smell all the smoke that we're still getting. We need to talk about better masking. We need to talk about N95 respirators, which would do a lot for both people who are not yet vaccinated or not previously infected, protecting them, as well as keeping others who might become infected, having been vaccinated, from breathing out the virus.
This is a remarkable thing to hear. I mean, this was always in the CDC website, but you never had it echoed from public health officials. They were so pro-mask, get the mask, get the mask, get the mask, get the mask, that nobody would do anything to ever denigrate them. It was your personal responsibility.
But it gives people something that they can do. It makes them feel good. It gives them a sense of control over their lives. I think I talked about this with Bethany Mandel, but not with you, that this is like a way that parents especially like deal with things with their kids when people, and I mean people in general, when people are afraid of something bad happening to them, they like things to do that give them the illusion of control over that, even if it's not really something that does anything, So, I mean, that manifests, like when we talked to your friend Jacqueline, for example, about how she got COVID, and the conversations with people were all them trying to figure out like where she got it, how she went wrong, what she did that got her to get COVID, and there's a sense from people want to know that if they take step ABC, that nothing bad will happen to them. Because people don't like the idea that something bad could just happen to them, and like not for a good reason.
Yes, but Alice, this split society.
I know, but I think that so the public health geniuses thought that it was better for people like to keep them like calm and relaxed and not freaking out about it. It was like better to let them have something that made them feel good
at the cost of their credibility.
Right. It made them, they felt that it was good to give people a sense of control over it, give them a way that they felt that they could feel safe and like go about their lives without freaking out, because a lot of people are now mentally damaged and can't like function in society without a mask on.
So their noble lie in this case was more damaging than no noble lie.
Right.
This is ridiculous, and
we're going to send kids to school this fall, and we're going to make them all wear little pieces of cloth over their little faces, even though we know it doesn't do anything, because it will make the parents feel good. It will make the parents feel like you can send them to the school 8 hours a day if they all wear little pieces of cloth over their face. So we're going to just keep pretending together that this does something.
I think this is remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. And I think that we should look back at this. And because we've been marinating in this craziness for such a while, that I think it's hard to take a fresh look. We're so immersed in all this information and all these new patterns of living that we've been put in. But I think if you were able to take a step back, or actually just take it, if you can go back in time to where we started here, what the messaging was, and how the messaging changed, and how the messengers at first, and these are the politicians at first, initially said when Trump first put the Chinese travel ban in, and to a person, elected leaders said this is disgusting and evil and mean, and go into Chinatown and go to Chinese restaurants and go see a movie together and go to the river. This was remarkable. What must have Fauci, the sainted Fauci, been saying when they said? Yeah. Well, actually, he was saying that too.
AOC said we weren't patroning the Chinese restaurants.
That's right. That's right. Remarkable. So that's where we are now. The masks are just a showpiece. They don't really work. It doesn't matter because we're done with the masks anyway.
But no, if people feel scared, then they can go wear an N95 respirator and a face shield. And I mean, that actually will prevent viruses from coming into your face fairly well in public. But you can do that, and then you don't really have to worry about what other people are wearing or if they're lying about being vaccinated or whatever. And this should have been the message for the last probably 9 to 12 months.
Yeah, but
because
how
we've
about this,
known
Alice?
this.
How about this? We're so petty and small and snivelly that the people who are scared of the disease, of the virus, they don't want to just wear the N95 and the spit shield, the huge windshield thing. They don't just want to do that. They also want you to do that. And I don't know if it's because if they're hurting, you have to hurt too, or because they'll feel silly, and so we all have to feel silly together. But it comes from a craven and small and childish place.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, so we're watching the Olympics happen now in Japan in real time, and now we've talked about this. Only like, what did we say? Like something % of Japan is vaccinated, like a really low percent. Of Japan is vaccinated, and now, but we were told that they got the virus under control because they all mask and followed rules, right? So they have near universal masking in Japan, like mask compliance is like 98%, and they're seeing cases now at the highest rate they've seen at any point in the pandemic, even though they have near universal masking, and we were told that was how they kept it all under control. Now, yes, the Olympics are happening, but they are testing these people that are in the country, most of whom are vaccinated, by the way. They're testing them constantly, and they're making them quarantine if they so much as test positive, even if they're showing no symptoms. I mean, and when they say quarantine, they're not talking about like here where a contact tracer calls you and tells you to stay home. They're talking about like they lock you in the hotel room and deliver all your food for you because they won't let you leave. You know, we're talking about, there was an Olympic skateboarder who got locked up. She tested positive. She couldn't compete. And she said it was like inhumane conditions that she was locked up in this room and they're just delivering like little styrofoam things of food to her. She can't leave. She can't see anyone. So that's like how they're handling COVID. And their cases are still higher than they've ever been right now. So it's obvious that these non-pharmaceutical interventions absolutely do not do what we're told that they do. At this point, I mean, like, we can see that they don't. Are they probably better than nothing if you have no treatments, if you have no tests, if you don't have hospital capacity, if you don't have a lot of the population who's already immune or vaccinated? Like, yeah, they're probably better than absolutely nothing. You know, we saw what happened, like, in New York at the beginning of the pandemic when there were no tests and everything. I mean, we had the highest death rates anywhere in the world, basically. So, I mean, yeah, these interventions, if you can do them, if you have nothing else to lean on, are probably okay. But I mean, like, we have vaccines now. A lot of people are immune. People can make their own choices. We have plenty of hospital capacity. We have plenty of PPE. People can take tests and get the results in a day. This is not the same situation that we had 15 months ago. So the time has come now for people to say these measures are, you know, okay if you have nothing else, but we don't need these anymore on a society-wide level because they just don't really do much. You know, it's the same thing we're seeing in Australia where they're doing a terrible job rolling out the vaccine. Like we talked to our friend Jamie B, who has a new podcast, by the way. Did you see that? In Australia, and they're, you know, locking everybody totally down. You know, people can go to the store one at a time for 5 minutes. They can only leave the house for 5 reasons. They have the army enforcing the quarantine now. And, I mean, they could be rolling out the vaccine, but they're not. They're doing this instead. And it's ridiculous that we have a society that's as vaccinated as we are, and we're still trying to lean on these non-pharmaceutical interventions because they just don't really do enough to be very impactful at a society-wide level.
So also today... So it's funny. All sorts of epiphanies happen on CNN today. Not only that, where the epidemiologist gets on and says, the masks don't work. We need good ones. Oh, okay, thanks. My goodness. You know, you've been on Etsy every day of the year, Alice, trying to sell your custom-made cotton masks. By the way, little Jerry Callahan masks.
I've made it a point not to sell masks because I think
And Alice, who cares? Let's sell them to the suckers.
I don't want
the
to
losers
sell
and the
masks.
suckers. Yes, we're selling them to the suckers.
Masks
yes,
are stupid. We're
not doing it for
them.
little Jerry Callahan. By the way, all proceeds for if you buy little Jerry Callahan merchandise, all proceeds go to. So that is
they go into Tom Shattuck's pocket. Is where they go.
Correct. And so we'll sell those. What about those water bottles? Let's get those going too.
Yeah, there's going to be a special on a water bottle, but those won't be available through our website. Those are a special thing.
They are?
Yeah, those are going to Patreon subscribers and stuff.
All right. All right.
Those
So
are special ones. And maybe for like prizes and stuff. Maybe we can have some listener competitions.
very good. Very good. I want to honor this wonderful chicken as much as possible, Alice, for barely $16 a pop. All right. So the other thing that happened on CNN is Brian Stelter had Oliver Darcy on. He's the CNN media dude, whatever. And it's remarkable that this was said. This has been something that's been obvious common sense since the beginning, but it was treated like an absolute revelation on CNN that, hey, you know what? Maybe we should focus on something different.
Maybe the word breakthrough is part of the problem. Breakthrough implies rare. Breakthrough implies something went wrong.
I don't like when he gravels his voice like that on purpose. Alice, it makes me feel like he's got me tied up somewhere. Rare, wrong. You've done something wrong, Tom.
Maybe the word breakthrough is part of the problem. Breakthrough implies rare. Breakthrough implies something went wrong. And that's not actually the premise of the vaccines.
Right. The premise is that you don't end up in the hospital, and we've seen that they work. I think news coverage almost needs to.
The premise is that you don't end up in the hospital, huh? Wow, what do you mean? Cases in Florida, DeSantis cases.
To reflect that maybe cases, like you said, are not the best barometer for how we measure the pandemic anymore. It should maybe perhaps be on hospitalizations, because if we are telling people that hospitalization is why you get the vaccine, then perhaps we should be measuring hospitalizations and putting more of an emphasis on the fact that high vaccinated areas have low hospitalizations and low vaccinated areas have high hospitalizations versus just a case count, which doesn't really capture the picture quite as well in 2021.
Says Stelter. Rare and wrong. So there you go. Would have been something nice for CNN to say from the beginning. But no, because you had Trump being president and you have states with governors like Ron DeSantis, they have to make all these things into cataclysmic failures of Republicans. And so the truth was a secondary or tertiary concept. Anything?
Keep going.
No, I'm done right there. That's right. And now you have it now.
I mean, I think I've said this all along, that vaccines, prevent serious illness, obviously.
Were you actually just not listening to this last 30 seconds?
No, I was looking for something.
Okay, because I noticed you're going back and forth on, what are you doing on social media?
I am looking for the study that I showed you earlier, but the tweet was deleted that I had initially sent you about the cycle threshold values.
Right.
The cycle threshold values for vaccinated and unvaccinated people.
What is the cycle threshold value?
Okay, so how much do you know about PCR tests, honey?
I know that they don't know the difference from the flu or the COVID.
That's not true. They're called a polymerase chain reaction test. Okay.
I thought they were Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Polymerase is an enzyme that can copy DNA or RNA.
Mm-hmm.
So basically what the test does is it takes like a little sample from your airway, and then it uses this enzyme to copy a bunch more of whatever's there so it can see what's there. Right? So it copies whatever's there until it can detect what's actually there. So it makes a bunch of copies of the DNA or the RNA until there's enough for the test to see what you have there. And then it looks at the DNA and it says, oh, this is SARS-CoV DNA, or it's flu DNA, or whatever it is, right? Do you see what I'm saying?
Shot glass.
Okay. So you know that. So the cycle threshold is how many times you
Tell people what shot glass means, Alice.
Shot glass means Tom's brain is a shot glass. So if we pour in, and it's like pouring beer into a shot glass. So if we give him new information, everything just flows out.
Exactly.
He has the same amount of information at the end of telling him something.
Correct.
So basically, the cycle threshold is how many times you have to run the PCR cycle until you can detect what you have, until you can see if there's SARS virus there or not. So if you have to run more cycles, then there was less there to start with. Do you see what I'm saying? Because you have to run more cycles to be able to see what virus is there. Do you get what I'm saying at all? Is this making sense? The cycle threshold is how many times you have to run the PCR to see what DNA you have, or in this case RNA, because it's an RNA virus. But,
I used to run the VCR at my dad's house.
Okay, so anyway, so basically what concerned them about this Barnstable County outbreak,
Barnstable,
the
thank
P-Town
you,
outbreak,
Alice.
Barnstable County.
was that the people who were in the hospital, the hospitalized people, had a similar cycle threshold to unvaccinated people who are in the hospital. So they were saying that meant there was roughly the same amount of virus in their system. However, cycle threshold does not necessarily translate one-to-one to viral load, to how much virus is in your system. And in the case of vaccinated people, in particular asymptomatic vaccinated people, it could also be that there's dead virus in their system, because the test can't tell the difference between RNA from a virus that's dead and your immune system is neutralized, and DNA and RNA from a virus that's infecting you. So yes, if you have more virus in your system, it generally means you're worse infected and your cycle threshold will be lower. However, it's not a perfect one-to-one correlation, and it doesn't necessarily correlate to how infectious you are. What we have seen from numerous studies other than Barnstable County's outbreak is that people who are vaccinated do have much lower cycle thresholds almost immediately once they're infected, because their immune system is killing off virus like nobody's business, and that in addition they probably aren't as infectious even with a similar cycle threshold. So basically there was this study in Qatar that I'm looking for again, but it found that the cycle thresholds are higher for there's less virus in the system of vaccinated people. So not what they're saying from the non-random Barnstable County sample of people, basically.
Okay, so the Barnstable County people that's why very few of them were hospitalized, in other words.
Not necessarily, but the point is that they were doing the test on the basis of people who were very sick. Like, they weren't comparing all vaccinated people who were at that bar and testing them for COVID, right? They were taking the people who did get sick and seeing how much virus was in their system, and the non-vaccinated people who did get sick and seeing how much virus was in their system, and they said it's a similar amount of virus. But there were probably a bunch of other vaccinated people also there who didn't get sick, who had a higher cycle threshold, who had less viral RNA in their system, because they didn't test all the people who were there. They only tested the ones who got sick, right? And what they've seen is that the cycle threshold doesn't necessarily correlate to infectiousness one-to-one either. But, I mean, the long story short is that probably this is an outlier. Probably there was not really a reason to do the mask mandates again. And they just wanted to do the mask mandates again because they want unvaccinated people to wear masks. And they've decided that the way to do that is just to tell the vaccinated people to wear masks again, too.
Right, and I think that they're now supercharged because some vaccinations the vaccination numbers are improving. So now they're like, "Whoa, look at this! We found a thing. We found a party in Provincetown. Mm-hmm. We're scaring people, and people are running to get vaccinated."
Right. Well, and I mean, there are cases going up. It's probably the case that some of the people who are running out to get vaccinated just hadn't made it a priority, just weren't really thinking about it, and maybe didn't really know anyone who had COVID. But probably. There are a bunch of people that are testing positive for COVID right now, and some of them are getting pretty sick. So if you know one of those people, you probably are more likely to go out and get vaccinated than not. But I think that what the CDC did this week really undermined vaccination efforts for the long term, to be honest.
I would think so. I mean, the messaging is just all...
I think if they had just left it alone and not done any of this stuff with Barnstable County and the masks and the whole thing, I think they probably would have seen better vaccination numbers than not.
Because now you have the Secretary of Defense looking like Darth Vader inspecting troops with a mask and a face windshield thing that's tinted, and like he looks like a cyborg. Biden now is back again to jumping off the plane with his mask on. What are we doing here? This is like, you couldn't have devised a better way to dissuade people from this vaccine if you wanted to.
Right, because you've gone out and told people it doesn't work, which goes against all the evidence that we have.
Right.
Except sort of maybe kind of this one case in Provincetown that's an outlier from everything else we know. And they haven't really released full information on it still.
Right. Well, exactly. And nobody's providing... A couple of people on Twitter on the left I've seen have provided the truth about that part of Barnstable and how it's atypical. But very few other people are.
Well, right. And you have concerned left-leaning people like Nate Silver and people like this who are saying, like, this is not evidence that the vaccine doesn't work. And the fact that they rushed out here with this message on the basis of this is, just wrecked everything that they've tried to do. And I think that it's obvious that they had an agenda to want people back in masks before the school year, before, virus cases spike back up, all that stuff. They wanted people back in masks anyway, and that this was a pretext. Otherwise, they should never have rushed out here, and you can see it in the news headlines. I have seen lefty people complaining about the news headlines saying the raw number of breakthrough cases without pointing out that it's like 1 in 100,000 people, that it's like a really, really tiny percent of people is getting a breakthrough case, and an even smaller percentage of them is hospitalized. That news organizations are now just chasing clicks in a way that's actually like detrimental to vaccine uptake, because they are chasing clicks that say that the Delta variant is vaccine resistant. I mean, look at this stupid story. Is this from The Guardian? Is that where that is? It's like some British group that says that the virus could mutate to become deadly enough to kill 1 out of every 3 people. Like, okay, but I mean, like, it could, I guess that's like possible, but it's like never been known to happen in the hundreds of years that we've been studying viruses. Like, we've never seen one do that, like just randomly mutate to become like hugely deadly. That's not a thing that really happens. I mean, sure, like anything's possible, but the idea that would happen, it's pure clickbait. It's pure just panic porn, trying to freak people out for no reason, absolutely just try to upset people. And it's frankly like irresponsible.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it's not only irresponsible, but you're creating these rifts amongst people. You've cast it in such a way that you've got all these performative and symbolic gestures that you're trying to get people to gravitate to. People can tell that they're not, but you're telling these people that these are sacred and crucial things to gravitate to. And so the people who gravitate, and at the same time you're saying the people who don't gravitate to them are risking your life and possibly killing your relatives.
Right.
And so that is crazy. What a way to divide a country. And if you're fundraising against it, well, that's great for you, but you're ruining the earth.
Yeah. So, and then you have people like take this up literally, like Ibram Kendi, who you played in the intro. We should probably play that, because this is what happens when you take that logic to its ultimate conclusion, that people who won't get vaccinated or won't wear a mask are killing you.
The right started pushing for the right and the freedom to open back up. I ended up writing this piece in The Atlantic that basically argued that we're still in a slaveholders' republic. And what I argued was that the slaveholder...
Remind me to start paying for a subscription to The Atlantic. I want to read more about how we're in a slaveholder republic.
The individual wanted the freedom to enslave. There's no difference between that and the individual saying, I should have the freedom to infect people. I should have the freedom to kill and exploit and harass and terrorize. And enslaved people had a different philosophy. Instead of the individual too, it was the community.
Well, among other things, I'm not sure that the racial breakdown of vaccine hesitancy works in his favor.
Yeah, those people are slaveholders.
All right.
From. So how do we as a community gain freedom from slavery, from oppression, or in the case of the coronavirus, from infection?
I mean, don't you think that individual freedom is something that is most acutely hindered by slavery? Doesn't it seem like slavery is most in conflict with individual freedom?
Well, right. Slavery at that point was state-sponsored limitations on your freedom. And the COVID lockdowns, I would say, are directly state-sponsored limitations on your freedom.
Now, would you say that there is a comparable right to not being enslaved, which is the right not to get sick? Do you think they're comparable? The right not to be made a slave by somebody is the same as your right to never get a cold.
No, unless unless the strep throat is my master suddenly for that week or whatever. It seems like a very tough. I'm shocked that he went to racism for the metaphor, but it seems like a
original
stretch.
For him,
yes.
I think. But he's just like so profoundly. This is such a dumb argument to me. Like, this is such a stupid way to put it. To say that the tension, that individual liberty is the freedom to enslave people and the freedom to infect people and the freedom to kill people. Like, nobody on the earth, like, has he ever met a libertarian? You know what? We should set up Ibram Kendi with Matthew Carano.
Ooh, I like it.
And have them talk about what individual liberty is actually about. Because I don't think he's literally ever talked to anybody who's made an argument on the basis of individual liberty. Because I would say that most people who make arguments from a standpoint of individual liberty are against slavery.
Yes, of course.
I think so. I'm pretty sure.
Well, in all that, it's also to suggest that it's ridiculous. I mean, you might, but it's nice and it's transferable as well because you can use this with climate and class as well. You know, the more you have of something gives you more exclusivity to places and things, which, as a default, those who are underserved in the community and marginalized are kept out of, are prohibited from, and so that's class slavery as well.
Well, right. I mean, and yeah, you can extend the argument, absolutely. Like, black people have much lower rates of home ownership in this country. So if racism is a public health crisis, if the disparities between black and white people in America are a public health crisis, then how can your individual liberty to own a home that you bought trump the collective importance of making sure that other people have the freedom to own a home as you do?
Right, yeah. It can work
How come you have the individual liberty to pollute, to put gas in your car and drive around and consume fossil fuels like that? How come you have the individual liberty to do that? How come you have the individual liberty to...
Fossil fuels, which are destroying the world, you know, which is causing the world to be essentially enslaved by your greed because it's hurting marginalized people the most. It's hurting natural resources that the poor people need. It's causing, we know it causes terrorism, climate change, but it also it upsets the environment, and hardest hit as usual are minorities. So yeah, there's so much. It's very tough to get away from his world of racism. My problem with him is that Ibram Kendi is he's unfortunately under the capture of his own idiocy because he's a dumb person. And he's a dumb person who has so much privilege, it's incredible. Right. People have bestowed upon him a prestige that he doesn't deserve because he's stupid. I think he's probably a nice guy. It sounds like he might be a nice guy. The way he speaks is very soft-spoken. But everybody around him is lying to him and has been now for at least 2 decades.
That's true.
You know, we're all pretending, okay, that's fine. Yes, that was very bright. Because that's why you would say something like he just said and have a take like that. As a matter of fact, yes, COVID resistance to the vaccine is also slavery. You're enslaving the rest of us. If you had respect for him, you would say, oh, Ibram, you can't really say that to people because that argument is asymmetrical, makes no sense, full of holes, incredibly flawed, and is going to make you seem like an idiot. And we're trying to sell this thing as you're a smart guy. But nobody respects him.
Yeah, no, they're lying to him. Just like, I mean, people kind of somebody almost tried to like push back when he defined racism as systems of racist structures
Right.
that are upheld by racist ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And
he said it twice.
Is that a little circular? And he was like, no, I'll repeat it. And anti-racism is a system of anti-racist structures that are upheld by anti-racist ideas. Sorry, that was more of an Obama impression than an Ibram Kendi impression.
Speaking of that, did you get an invite to the party?
No, mine must be lost in the mail because I would assume that we're invited.
I would absolutely
There's at least
go.
700 people invited, so how can we not be on the guest list at this point?
Are we surprised? He is too good because not only is there 700 people invited, but they're invited to his huge Martha's Vineyard, huge, sprawling, giant estate on the beach, on the water.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one would wonder if his core principles that he showcases to us constantly are indeed solid principles, or perhaps he is. These are affectations.
How many acres is it? It's like 50 acres or
it's
something.
Huge.
On the water. It's like ridiculous.
It's awesome. It's a great place.
You talked about the importance of defining racism, but I unless I missed it, which is possible, I didn't hear your personal definition. Is there one that you would offer us? Like, how do you define racism?
Sure. So racism, I would define it as a collection of racist policies that lead to racial inequity that are substantiated by racist ideas.
Okay.
Sure.
You're like, that's not what your book says, right? The book is better than that, right?
Of racist policies that lead to racial inequity that are substantiated by racist ideas. And anti-racism is pretty simple, using the same terms. Anti-racism is a collection of anti-racist policies leading to racial, anybody want to take a guess? Equity that are substantiated by anti-racist ideas.
Okay. Like seriously, Professor Kendi, how do we get an A in your class? What are we supposed to say?
You just have to take a knee and raise your fist.
And say racist, racist, racist? What is the answer to question 4? Racism? Correct. For extra points, what kind? Systemic? Correct. Systemic? Describe systemic. Systems. Correct. I see. I get it now. I understand how this works, this class. I like this professor, and he's soft-spoken, too.
That's Tom's best grade in school, actually, I'm pretty sure.
The Racism 101?
Yeah.
Okay. Did we play the TikTok? We did do the identify as an animal thing, right?
Did we do that?
No,
we didn't do the identifying as an animal. You did other TikTokers yesterday, but not the animal person.
This might be one that I found on my own.
The noun self pronouns. It's from the same account that I taught you about, the Libs of TikTok account.
Don't tell these people, Alice. Make them think this is tough.
I made a really loud, yelly video about this, but I decided I will approach this in a more calm but stern manner.
You love their calm but stern manners, Tom. That's your favorite.
No, but that's her, concession to us. I'm going to give you one calm but stern. The last one was yelly, deservedly so, because you deserve it, because you don't seem to understand it. You don't seem to know anything. But now I'm going to give you another one, and this one's going to be calm but still stern.
A lot of the people using kitty and pup and bunny self-pronouns are neurodivergent minors. It is a very common neurodivergent experience to feel a disconnect.
Neurodivergent minor.
Mm-hmm. Questions?
Is this like the Chilean minors?
No. A neurodivergent means, as opposed to neurotypical, it's a better way of saying mentally off or whatever.
A neurodivergent minor is somebody under 18?
Minor is under 18. Yep. Neurodivergent means mentally disabled.
Okay.
From being human and from...
By the way, that noise, boom, boom, when she said human, was on purpose. That means human to qualify it, so we're not jarred by the word.
From the societal expectation of the gender you were assigned at birth. So when you have this intersection of feeling a disconnect from being human and a disconnect from the societal expectation of gender, Whether you're neurodivergent or not, a lot of people have this experience who are
Is neurodivergent, so what's the clinical speak for just effing crazy?
That's neurodivergent.
Okay, so that's what the...
Neurodivergent is mentally disabled, yeah. Neurotypical is what the rest of us are. So, like,
yeah, but
like they had to invent a word for normal, for, like, trans people are trans, and then normal people are cisgender. So, like, they had to invent a word for being mentally normal, which is neurotypical. Sometimes abbreviated NT instead of ND.
I hope so.
So you're a neurotypical cis person.
Okay.
Neurodivergent. It's just very common with neurodivergent people. When this intersects, you get noun self pronouns and animal noun self pronouns.
Why? Wait a second. I'm hearing a lot of like root word Latin-y kind of things, and neurodivergent and noun self pronouns, etc. And so I just heard the word. I swear to God, Alice, I just heard the word animal.
Animal noun self pronouns is when you like to go, like, say you were neurodivergent and you didn't really identify with being human,
right?
Then you could request that we all call you like Tom went to the store by dog self.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Yeah. So you can say,
would you mind doing that?
I know.
If you are not comfortable using someone's pronouns because you assume it's kink for some weird reason, don't interact with them and just shut up about it.
Or else what's going to happen? A fire going to burst out somewhere? What's going to happen if I do interact with them, Alice? What happens?
Harmful. It's really harmful to people if you don't use their animal noun self pronouns.
And why is kink a thing now? What is this? Why is this? If you think, and why was she angry towards the end?
Yeah, that's you. You have a breeding kink.
Why did she get up angry at the end?
Because some people apparently think that people use noun self pronouns because they're furries.
Why do people?
And why
do the furries also have to be sensitive? Why does the person who thinks he's a Colombian ground marmot also have to be really touchy about the subject?
Furries is they do it for kink. But some people are neurodivergent.
Oh, they really are the animal.
She's saying that some people don't want to use animal noun self pronouns for some neurodivergent minors because they assume it's a kink like furries have. But some neurodivergent minors just in a non-kink way identify with being an animal.
And they're very sensitive about it.
Yes.
There's no animals that have a thick skin? That are absolutely cool with whatever you say?
Well, I mean, Pepper gets very upset if you use the wrong pronouns for her. I've noticed this about her.
Sorry, Pepper. So why is...
I mean, you get sensitive if I use what you perceive to be the wrong pronouns for the late LGC.
Well, yes, because that's your kink, which is weird, and I don't like you doing that when it comes to my poultry friends. Alice, who understand me, and they understand, and I understand them.
Mm-hmm. So, in case you didn't already think the internet was a mistake after hearing that, I have news for those of you in the very online crowd. This will come as no surprise, but Chris Chan has been arrested.
How do I know Chris Chan?
Chris Chan is a neurodivergent trans cartoonist and YouTuber who has been popular since about like 2007. I mean, popular. Has been well known, let's say, since around 2007. And I would say that some of the treatment of Chris Chan, who was at one point Christian Chan, but now goes by Christina Chan, has been a little unkind. So because Chris Chan is autistic and makes a cartoon called Sonichu, which is like a blend of Sonic the Hedgehog and Pikachu, which a lot of people on the internet feel is bad, a poorly made cartoon. People have been trolling Chris Chan for, 15 years now, including like pretending to be Chris Chan's friend and talking to him and whatever, and like then publicizing the conversations and other unkind things. But Chris Chan has now been arrested because one of the people who was trolling Chris had a conversation with him or her in which he revealed, this is a 39-year-old man who says he's a woman, has revealed that he has been trying to be intimate with his mother who has dementia and doesn't know what's going on. So now,
why would you want to air this out, Ellis?
This is going to be big news on the internet. I'm serious, because this is like, you heard it here first, folks. This is like a semi-famous YouTuber person who's like pretty well known in the extremely online circles, and this is now just hitting sort of like mainstream publications. But this person is extremely sick and twisted and messed up and has been abusing his mother who has dementia, who doesn't know what's going on, and has finally been arrested and is of course in women's prison because why not? But it's going to be interesting because mother-son incest is illegal in Virginia, but not mother-daughter incest. So it's going to be interesting how they try this case, but we'll see. So like I said, in case you didn't already think that the internet was a mistake now, I'm sure you definitely do. And, you know, we welcome the end of civilization and all of this that we have wrought upon ourselves. So now you know about Chris Chan, honey, and all our listeners do too.
Thank you for that, Alice.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you very much. Anything else
welcome.
going on?
Now you know. Now you know.
The more you know.
So there continues to be outrage around the article, the Katie Herzog article we told you about last night on Jesse Singal's blog. I don't know if, or not Jesse Singal, sorry. She's on the podcast
on
with
Barry
Jesse
Weiss's
Singal on Barry Weiss's Substack.
Yes, and I saw this develop today. It was incredible. That now has been flagged and removed from Reddit. You can't use Substack anymore on Reddit because she brought up the conversation of med school bullies who went after academics and
Reddit says this is not a safe source for medical news. This is unsubstantiated. It's essentially a blog. And meanwhile, the comments are completely affirming that this is absolutely going on. Here's a taste of some of the things people have been saying in the Reddit comments. I am a mid-level practitioner and graduated from a big-name school in the California Bay Area years ago. My relative recently graduated from the same university. The level of hostility and cancel culture she witnessed was mind-boggling to her, an ultra-liberal person of color. For example, they were told never to present cases identifying a patient's sex. Instead of saying something like 50-year-old male presents with, they were instead required to say 50-year-old person with a penis presents with. Much of this was pushed by a small cohort of activist students who would compile cancel lists of professors and students they would target for punishment or firing. In one such case, they successfully removed a professor who lectured that there were sex and racial differences in presentation of some diseases and drug responses, such as MIs in women versus men or differing responses to hypertensive medications in African Americans. They would argue with the professor during the lecture, saying that claiming lower ACE inhibitor responsiveness in African Americans was simply teaching racism because there's no such thing as race. The professor was removed from teaching duties after they complained. In another notable case, they told a queer cross-dressing person of color that his objections to teaching about microaggressions came from a place of male privilege, and he needed to read the literature because they were tired of correcting all that was wrong with the curriculum. The student was so turned off that they never participated in class discussions again for the remainder of the program. In one class discussion, an activist student said that according to her indigenous history, the concept of sex never existed before white men came, and that teaching sex-based medicine was a form of violence towards her due to white colonialism.
Yes, I was going to say that. I agree with that.
So, did you know that Native Americans didn't recognize any gender or sex differences?
Yes, that's one of the things I knew. I've always known. Judge Andrew Napolitano is out at Fox News following sexual harassment allegations. Do you know that?
Oh, wow.
Andrew Napolitano is no longer employed by the company. This comes after a lawsuit filed by Fox Business production assistant John Fawcett, who alleges that he was sexually harassed in an elevator by the judge in 2019. In this lawsuit, Fawcett alleges senior execs were aware of the misconduct but declined to take further action. Fawcett also alleges that Napolitano also harassed other employees. Did you know?
Is Napolitano gay?
I guess so, or he's straight and really likes to sexually harass men.
I had no idea.
I had no idea, too. The things that you learn, the things you do for love.
The Washingtonian wants us to know that the reporter who published photos of
this is
Mayor
too good.
Muriel
Too good.
Browser at officiating an indoor wedding, maskless, after she put her mask mandate into effect. Wants us to know that reporter was not, in fact, invited to the wedding.
How awesome is that? How awesome is that? Usually the media gets a table closest, if not the head table, close to the head table, I found, at most weddings I have been to.
I had one more thing, but I'll save it.
Go ahead. No, please. Do you one more thing?
Have you heard of the writer Cormac McCarthy?
Yeah, I have, but I don't read books, as you know. And why don't I read books, Alice?
Because books is dumb.
Where you can find merchandise that says Books is Dumb on there on burnbarrelpodcast.com. And while you're there, why don't you pick up a little something for our friend, little Jerry Callahan, who has passed, the late little Jerry Callahan,
Shameless.
who we love as well. All proceeds go to him.
Mm-hmm. So, Pepper moved my camera. I didn't notice earlier. But in any case, Cormac McCarthy was briefly verified on Twitter before people pointed out that the person running the verified Cormac McCarthy Twitter account was not, in fact, Cormac McCarthy, but was just someone pretending to be Cormac McCarthy. So the Twitter verification system is perfect. Once again, never makes a mistake. I'm so glad they have control over what news we can read and not read, because they seem really on their A game and on top of things. And I don't know if there's any way to verify who a world famous
What's Pepper
author is.
barking about, guys? You guys know?
But once
Just wanna make sure
again,
it's not an escape kid
our
fake.
tech and media overlords do everything perfectly. But you can find us on Twitter at BurnBarrelPod, Facebook.com/BurnBarrelPodcast. We are also on YouTube. That's Tom Shattuck's Burn Barrel. Or you can shoot us an email if, those tech services have kicked you off or anything. That's burnbarrelpodcast@gmail.com.
Absolutely. Once again, we respect and we remember the notorious LGC, Alice. Best friend a fella could have. Fellow traveler in the yard. Companion in outdoor adventures.
Does that make you T. Diddy?
Killer of ticks. I saw him actually go after a rabbit the other day. There you go. Never forget you.
We still a team. Through your family, I'll fulfill your dreams. In the future, can't wait to see if you open up the gates for me. Reminisce sometime. The night they took my friend. Try to black it out, but it plays again.